This is Cgtn, China Global Television Network.
Welcome to the world today. I'm Zhongxi live in Beijing. We begin in Hong Kong, where it's been 1 year since the national security law took effect. Chief Executive Carrie Lam praised the law as serving as the key stand in the city's governance. Meanwhile, Beijing has slammed remarks saying the law put Hong Kong into a human rights crisis.
Data shows that the amount of capital that flowed into Hong Kong last year was as high as $50 billion, and the amount of funds raised by Hong Kong IPO stocks ranked second in the world. In the year's first quarter, Hong Kong's GDP increased by 7.9% compared with the same time last year. A recent IMF report confirmed Hong Kong's status as an international financial center, and the number of overseas media and practitioners entering Hong Kong has been on the rise. These are all votes of confidence in Hong Kong's national security law and its development. Any attempt to smear Hong Kong's national security law cannot stop Hong Kong's general trend of progress.
Reuters is reporting the United States could be only days away from fully pulling out troops from Afghanistan. The news agency cited unnamed American officials in a report. If confirmed, the completion of the withdrawal will come months ahead of the September 11th deadline, said by the White House. Reuters also says around 650 troops will remain to provide security for the U.S. Embassy. On Tuesday, Germany said it had finished pulling troops out of the war-torn country. Berlin had the second largest military presence in Afghanistan after the U.S. Washington and NATO are withdrawing troops as the Taliban ramps up its offensive throughout the country. The peace talks in Qatar have not led to any major progress. The Ethiopian army says Tigrayan forces are no longer a threat in the northern region's capital of Mekelle. The Tigray People's Liberation Front reclaimed the city this week. The Ethiopian government says they've withdrawn forces to deal with other threats, but say the army can re-enter Mekelle when necessary. This comes 2 days after the government declared a unilateral ceasefire, which the TPLF has dismissed as a joke. A fallout with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has led to 8 months of clashes in the region, which have left thousands killed and has hampered humanitarian aid. President Vladimir Putin has been taking questions from the Russian public, ranging from the pandemic to the economy. It's been an annual tradition for Putin to hold live Q&A sessions since 2001. The event comes as Russia grapples with a spike of coronavirus infections triggered by the highly infectious Delta variant and what's been described as sluggish vaccination rates. Putin, who's already been vaccinated against COVID-19, has said he's opposed to mandatory inoculations. Julia Chapman tells us more from Moscow.
Presenters of the annual phone-in to President Vladimir Putin said more than 2 million questions had been submitted to the president by members of the Russian public. But there's no doubt that the pandemic dominated most of this question and answer session. President Putin started by urging Russian citizens to get vaccinated against COVID-19 amid very slow uptake of the vaccines here in Russia. The country has approved 4 different jabs against the virus, but less than 12% of the population has been fully inoculated. President Putin also announced for the first time that he had been given Sputnik V, Russia's main vaccine against COVID-19. He said he was against mandatory vaccination, but the law does allow for it, and he defended the decisions by a number of regional leaders in Russia to introduce just that. It comes as there are rising cases across Russia of COVID-19 as the country gets to grips with the Delta variant of coronavirus. Record deaths have been reported in Russia for the past 2 days now, so the situation is certainly becoming more serious, and authorities are very keen to improve the vaccination rate in the country. He was also asked about a confrontation in the Black Sea last week between Britain and Russia and whether that could have escalated headed into a third world war. President Putin dismissed concerns that it could have escalated and said that the British were simply trying to understand Russia's defense capabilities off Crimea and to test them.
DPRK state media KCNA says leader Kim Jong-un has replaced some top officials for failures in efforts to defend the country against the coronavirus pandemic. During a Politburo meeting of the Workers' Party on Tuesday, Kim said the actions of some officials led to a grave incident that put the safety of the country and people at risk. KCNA did not specify any details about what happened or how it put people at risk. But Kim said the irresponsibility of the senior officials is a major factor hampering the execution of important tasks. Pyongyang closed its borders in January last year to defend itself against COVID-19. It has not officially confirmed any cases, a claim questioned by South Korean and U.S. officials. Tanzania says it has 100 COVID-19 hospital patients in its third wave, according to the first coronavirus data the country has released in over a year. President Samia Suluhu Hassan says 70 patients are in a critical condition and currently on ventilators. Cgtn's Daniel Kinjo has more.
After more than a year, Tanzania has released data on COVID-19 patients in the country.
Sasa ukiangalia si wengi.
If you look at the data, it's not many patients, but we have to take precautions so the number does not increase. So we decided to align with what the rest of the world is doing and get vaccines.
Tanzania last released COVID-19 data in April 2020. After that, then President John Magufuli's administration denied the virus was present in the country. A committee of experts on COVID-19 set up by Tanzania's new president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, recommended a change in handling the pandemic. It urged that official figures on the spread of the disease in the country be shared and also called for vaccines to be made available. The Tanzanian government says it is processing a $470 million loan from the World Bank to help combat the pandemic. Half of the money will be used to purchase COVID-19 vaccines, while the other half will be used to bail out sectors that have been severely hit by the pandemic. The president has also confirmed that Tanzania has already registered for the COVAX facility package. The vaccines will be voluntary to give citizens the opportunity to choose what is best for them. No specific dates for the rollout have been given.
Now our experts are working on deciding which vaccine we should import and how. We can have two doors, those who are willing to buy the vaccine commercially and those who will be vaccinated by the government.
President Samia has handled the pandemic differently from her predecessor Magufuli, who died in March. Her decision to publish hospitalization numbers and acquire vaccines sets Tanzania on a path more in line with the rest of the world. Daniel Kijo, Cgtn, Dar es Salaam.
A record-smashing heat wave continues to sweep North America. Canada on Tuesday set a record all-time high temperature in the town of Lytton, British Columbia at 49.5 degrees Celsius. A total of more than 230 people have died in British Columbia since Friday. At least 69 deaths have been recorded in the Vancouver area alone. Local police say most of the dead in the suburbs over the past 24 hours were elderly or underlying health conditions. And in the U.S. Pacific Northwest, temperatures are reaching levels not seen since record-keeping began in the 1940s. Our Mark New has more from Spokane, Washington.
We are closing in at about 112 degrees Fahrenheit or 44 degrees Celsius. For this time of year, that is an all-time record. Now, I spoke to the Spokane branch of the National Weather Service. A forecaster there told me that in past years at this time, it's typically averaged about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 degrees Celsius. So we're looking at least 18 degrees greater than the average. Now, what's causing this heat wave? Well, it's something called a heat dome. Think of it as essentially a high pressure area that parks over a particular region, and it's like a lid on a pot trapping the heat underneath. Scientists have shown that heat domes are more likely to occur during La Nina years, and this is certainly a La Nina year with a weather pattern where waters are cool in the eastern Pacific and warm in the western Pacific. The temperature difference creates winds that blow tropical western air eastward. That warm air gets trapped in a jet stream and is delivered to the U.S. West Coast. That produces temperatures that last for consecutive days and nights, the scorching temperatures that we are seeing right now. Now, the city is having a difficult time addressing some of these issues, but I just visited about a block away a cooling center that's next to a merry-go-round, so people are cooling off there. Now, many houses here don't necessarily have air conditioning because they're simply not used to that. The infrastructure is also being impacted too, cracks on the streets, and this past weekend in Portland, they had to suspend streetcar service because the power line cables melted. This is all putting a strain on the power grid too. At least a dozen power shortages have occurred in the Pacific Northwest. They have also in certain areas implemented rolling blackouts to try and ease the grid, but that of course frustrates people in this heat. And I talked to experts who say one of the big things is they're used to having the nights a little cooler so they can open the windows and cool down their house, but that time period where it's cool is just a really small window, not enough to cool down their houses. Also in Canada, at least 15 school districts had to cancel classes. They simply lack the infrastructure to keep their kids cool. So cities in the Pacific Northwest simply not equipped and accustomed to dealing with such intense and long-lasting heat. Mark New, Cgtn, Spokane, Washington.
And that is the world today at this hour. I'm Zhong Shi. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with China 24.